Hello, Fantasy Sports owners. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Sports News and World Report. I'm your host, Brian Lyles, and today is a special edition. Now, normally we would discuss about some upcoming fantasy games that are around since football season's over, baseball season's yet to begin. So normally we would talk about is wrestling. Unfortunately, for two things, there's no fantasy game for wrestling anymore. Thank you, Vince. But there's also another problem. It's just that wrestling ain't even that fun anymore. So, I have with me is a panel of gentlemen here that will help discuss and hopefully fix professional wrestling here in the United States of America. With me is, of course, the star of his own show, and let me read this again, Maximum Championship Wrestling Battle Royal Champion.
Yes, that is correct.
The X-Man.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
With new on the panel is Michael Valentine. He has a wrestling blog called The Modified Shining Wizard. You can see that on modifiedshiningwizard.blogspot.com.
Yes.
And in the far end, you probably heard his sounds up in the DJ booths at Club 5 and a lot of other DC area clubs. It is DJ Hannock. Welcome. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. First off is this nice, simple question. Is there a problem? Is there a problem? Actually, I know you got a lot of things to say, but I like to start with the newbies. So, DJ Hannock, tell us, is there a problem with professional wrestling?
Yes, there is.
Why?
I think there's a lot of issues right now going on with wrestling. Majority of its storyline, and the whole basis of wrestling is so that you can lull yourself into this place where you're believing the action that you're watching. And I think that because of what's going on outside of wrestling and within our culture, I think that that's being affected, and they're not adapting to what's going on around them in the world. The storylines aren't realistic. The way that they build certain characters up, it's just not cutting the cheese anymore. You know what I mean? If that even means anything. Yeah.
Mike, what is your opinion on this? Do you feel there is a problem or not?
It feels like ever since WCW went under, and now that there's only one guy, pretty much Vince McMahon's company here in America, there's no number two company. He can do whatever he wants, and because of this, we're just getting really bad storylines, and just he's pushing different people who don't really seem to deserve the pushes, and it's just the state of the business itself doesn't really look like it's going in a good direction. Pretty much what we need is competition, and I know TNA is out there, but they're nowhere near competition for what WWE is. If anything, they're just a glorified Ring of Honor right now.
Okay. X, I know you're...
Brian.
I want you and the viewers to go to their happy place and just imagine the Colorado Rockies. There's a lot of peaks and there's a lot of valleys. Wrestling has always been about peaks and valleys. People said the business was going to die in the 90s. People said the business was going to die in the 70s, but it's come back. We've had the NWO have a resurgence in the business. We had DX have a resurgence in the business. When Hulk Hogan was all but dead and buried, and actually, that let's not joke about that because he could die any moment now. But when Hogan was dead and gone, Stone Cold Steve Austin rise from the ashes. Wrestling has that phoenix force to him. Yes, the business sucks right now. There's really no good storylines, and as Mike said, Vince has no real competition, and Vince is becoming complacent, and it's showing in his product, it's showing in his house show revenues. They're nowhere near what they were. However, they haven't reached a different spike. I think they're resting on the laurels of John Cena, and I think you can't put all your eggs in one basket, because as we experienced with Cena going out with that pec injury, that was the panic button being pressed, and they pressed it again and brought him back. Hopefully it wasn't too soon, but only the future.
All right, everybody here has had this common denominator. It's been bad storylines. Is it, where let's see, X, you're in the business. Pretty much the guy who promotes MCW, pretty much writes the storylines and stuff. Who's really at fault with that?
Well, if we're talking about WWE, it's always gonna go back to Vince McMahon. However, he has his core set of writers, and a lot of them are Hollywood writers, people that don't really have a passion for the business or respect for the business. Stephanie McMahon, who was born in the business, should know better than improving half the storylines that they've been putting out there. So the fault does rely on Stephanie McMahon, but ultimately it goes back to Vince for allowing these angles. They even are contemplating an incest angle. Now you tell me if that's going to make some money.
Okay.
I mean, I agree with you to an extent. I just think that when none of the wrestlers are over, which means none of the wrestlers are popular, whether they be good guys or bad guys, none of them are over. But I think it's an issue, and I don't think that storylines can be believable at that, when that's the case. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, like Xavier said, X-Men. Sorry. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that. Where was I going with this? I'm out of it right now.
Okay, Mike.
You must write for WWE.
No, but what I'm saying is, you have a lot of Hollywood writers that are writing these storylines, and they're picking these characters, and they're creating these characters and who they are, and they're not from the business. And if that's the case, then if the wrestlers can't believe in themselves, then how is that going to translate to them, so that the fans will believe who they are? You know what I'm saying? Like, back in the days, all the wrestlers were just extensions of themselves. You look at guys like Ric Flair, you look at all the big guys, they were all extensions of themselves. And now you have all these people that are trying to be scripted characters and actors, and it's just not working because they don't believe in it. And if you don't believe in it, it's just like any other job. Like, if you hate the job that you're working at, you're not going to be very good at it.
Okay, let me ask you this, Mike. Do you think that since WWE, when originally it was WWF, took the F out, did you felt like that, like you said earlier, Hennig, it's like that was their extension because it came with attitude and realism? Do you feel that since they became this different entity, and then you have TNA, do you feel that made things, that sort of was the true beginning of their change?
Yes and no. It kind of feels more of like when they changed everything in the 90s, when Austin showed up and they started going more outrageous with their storylines with D-Generation X and The Nation and everybody else that was out there was just over the top. It seems like Vince is still stuck in that mid-90s mentality 10 years later. And he feels that that story is still progressing and that it's going to still help the business, when he needs to realize that that was 10 years ago. You can't rely on the same story over and over and over again. You need to be able to move forward with the times and see what the fans really want. We have guys that the fans are cheering for, like Jimmy Wang Yang, Matt Hardy, MVP. The fans love these people. But none of them so far have gotten the major push that they deserve. MVP wins his United States Championship, but because of circumstances that WWE doesn't want to ever acknowledge anymore, they can never say how he won the title. He might as well have just walked into the room and just found it somewhere. Just picked it up, and he hasn't really done much with it. He's a great character, but he doesn't have a good feud.
Probably the most well-written character in wrestling right now. I think,
Well, just like you were saying, he's an extension of himself.
Exactly.
Well, you just pointed out there, we're so used to, we're old school, good versus bad. Is that lost now?
Oh yeah. It seems like after Austin, everyone wants to be like a tweener. Everyone wants to be the cool bad guy.
Unless when it comes to merchandise sales, it always helps when you're a good guy. But
Booker T is the best example of when he's a heel, he's a heel. When he became King Booker and was the biggest heel on SmackDown, he had no merchandise whatsoever. Finlay had merchandise. Edge has merchandise. Booker T, when he was working for that company as a heel, no merchandise. He knew that he was going to be taking a cut from his salary because of it, but he also knew what an old school heel was.
And he believed in his character.
Exactly.
Well, speaking of Booker T, actually we were here a couple months ago we had another special edition about not just wrestling, but more like the whole how the sports industry and the effect of steroid use and things like that. And I'm going to this angle of, has that also affected the popularity of wrestling, since Booker T was one among 10 wrestlers that was allegedly named during that steroid war, witch hunt, as a lot of people call it now. But then also, of course, the Benoit incident. So, and then of course a few years earlier with Eddie Guerrero's death. Has that affected the industry in any way, shape, or form?
Has that turned off viewers? Hardcore fans, possibly. Casual fans, possibly. You know, there's no real feel for that sense. The industry itself is alienating its core fans with all the crap that they're putting out on TV, and these are their core fans, but yet we're up here talking about how much we are like taken aback by what Vince is doing. Steroids is the sexiest headline anyone could ever put on a sports that could tag on a sports any type of sports document. If it's steroids, it's going to attract all types of people, all types of press. Is the industry in trouble because of Chris Benoit? Of course, but so is baseball, so is football. And like I said about Shaq, I told you that man. You tell me that's chicken and rice, and they don't grow them that big anymore. I'm telling you. But in the long run, especially with Booker T, discussing the whole Booker T thing, you know, Booker will tell you he was never had a part in steroids. Personally, I don't believe it. You know, that's just me. But yeah, it has affected how the industry itself is being viewed by outside sources. You know, Stallone, who's in the entertainment business, along with how Vince McMahon portrays his WWE is entertainment. You know, now is there a fine line to cross? Maybe Vince is trying to backtrack. Never know.
And as a fan, do you feel that? First off, how did you feel about the Benoit incident?
About the Benoit incident? Yeah. I still think Kevin Sullivan did it, but that's the conspiracy theorist in me. But like I was saying, I know, read it out. You're gonna have these kind of situations happen. I mean, it happens, you know, to normal people. I mean, yeah, but I'm not saying they're everyday occurrences, but I'm just saying that these kind of things happen, and it just happened to happen to a wrestler one time, you know. And it's tragic. It's sad what happened, but you know, it doesn't turn me off to watching wrestling. You know what I mean? Bad storylines do. You know, John Cena being Hulk Hogan, that turns me off to wrestling. You know what I mean? Those kind of things turn me off.
Right. Mike, what about you?
Personally, the Benoit incident kind of hit home for me because he was kind of a personal wrestling hero for me. And when everything happened, I just refused to believe it. But the day that they said he was found dead in his house, before anything was announced, I was like, he did it. There was no way around it. But as of now, I'm not too sure if there were any fans gained or lost with the Chris Benoit incident, mainly because you can look at the ratings before and after, and the ratings still pretty much remain the same, just kind of.
They pretty much have since the whole WCW thing.
Exactly.
Pretty much just leveled out.
So with the whole Benoit incident, they obviously didn't lose much or gain any more, just more national media attention, and had Sports Illustrated do their thing to try to find steroids in a sport that technically isn't a sport because there's no competition in it. That's a totally different subject right there.
Okay, well, we're going to change subject, but before that, we're going to take a break. We're going to try to fix professional wrestling a little bit more, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Fantasy Sports World Girl Tanya Hartwell. There's more fantasy sports, news, and world report right after this.
Thousands of kids in this country have everything it takes to go to college, except the money. The United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Hello, ladies. I'm Fantasy Sports World Girl, Andrea. I know you're watching Fantasy Sports and News World Report to get all the information you need to beat out those wannabe jocks at your office. So, why not glorify your victory by being a Fantasy Sports World Girl like me? Just send a picture and a brief bio to the producer at btb417@netzero.net. Your picture will only be on the show and on the Fantasy Sports MySpace page. In addition, you qualify to be Fantasy Sports Girl of the Year, where you'll win a nice prize. And no, it's not a date with the secret source, but he's cute. So, watch Fantasy Sports News and World Report with Brian Lyles, and you might see yourself as the next Fantasy Sports World Girl. My fantasy came true. Will yours?
I'm principal of a new kind of public school. It's open up to 15 hours a day, year-round. It has loads of academic, cultural, and recreational activities. We have medical and dental services right here. Our teachers have more time to teach. Our students are better prepared to learn. There's just one problem. We can't get the kids to go home.
Find out how your school can be more like this one. Call 1-877-LOVE-TO-LEARN.
Welcome back to the second half of the Fantasy Sports News and World Report.
Welcome back to the Fantasy Sports News and World Report. I'm your host, Brian Lyles, and with me again is the X-Man, Michael Valentine, and DJ Hannick. And we're here to try to fix professional wrestling. If you guys were, let's say, had the money to take over TNA, you know, just to gut it out and restart it, how would you fit? Who you would start with? Basically, we have this little thing called studs, sleepers, and stinkers. Basically, you pick your top three, or basically one guy you feel like is the primary guy. One guy you think will probably surprise everybody and basically be a nice undercover star. And then that one guy you just can't stand, you don't want to touch. X, I want to start with you. Who would be your number one guy, the one guy who will lead your company?
Well, the one guy that I would like to have lead my company is a current champion with WWE right now, and that's got to be Edge. Edge has got every single tool that you need to be an established star, and Edge wasn't really given much. He fought for what he had. Edge has got mic skills. Edge can actually wrestle, and he's got a passion for the business that not many people really have right now. He was so passionate about the business, he even took Lita from Matt Hardy, but we won't get into that. No, we're not talking about that. As far as, let's say, an up-and-comer, someone to build my promotion around, current Ring of Honor star Nigel McGuinness. For those of you that don't know Ring of Honor, Nigel McGuinness, think a younger William Regal. And that's like enough said right there. William Regal is probably one of the most technically sound guys that are around right now. Now, the person that we want to stay away from, definitely last call, Scott Hall. You definitely want to stay away from Scott Hall. Scott Hall is a locker room poison. He's a locker room dictator, and he probably won't show up.
But he's the bad guy.
But he's beyond a bad guy.
He's a bad guy that lives his gimmick. Right. Trust me. And you don't want this guy dying on your payroll.
All right, Mike, who is your stud guy? Who would you build your company around?
If I could pull him away from WWE, it would be Chris Jericho. I would have him as my main guy to revolve the first part of the company, title, all the big stories and everything around. I think that he has the charisma, he has the mic skills. When you let him work, he can go. I'd let him do like Japanese style kind of wrestling, let him go back to the basics, hopefully drawing the crowd with actual good wrestling as opposed to terrible stories. My up-and-comer, I have a lot of people. I have so many people I would pick from that. Yes. From the one that I would pick, it would be Bryan Danielson from Ring of Honor. Yes, from Ring of Honor. He is, he calls himself the American Dragon, best in the world, and I personally have to agree with him. He is, I think, a sleeper wrestler right now that a lot of people are aware of him, and he himself has said he will never sign with WWE or TNA because he wants to wrestle his own style. He doesn't want to go somewhere where they tell him, just, no, you can't do this.
All right, and who's that one guy or person that you want to avoid?
I'd have to also go with Scott Hall. There's no way Scott Hall would ever be in the locker room. I wouldn't even let him near the building. He wouldn't be allowed to buy a ticket to come and watch my show. I don't want him anywhere near my promotion.
And Hannick, he's acting like the bad guy here. Who's your?
He was NWO for this. Outsider.
Who's your guy who would you like to build a company around?
As much as I hate him, I'd honestly say Cena because it makes sense from a business standpoint because it's super over with a lot of the younger kids. I think it's just the fact that his character is horrible. That's why I hate him. You know what I mean?
But hasn't he grown since when we first saw him as like that rapper and all that stuff?
No. He still does the five knuckle shuffle. I mean, if you put a little edge to him, he could be one of those crossover stars, and the people that are booing him would still.
Yeah, speaking of Edge, Edge did make Cena, by the way. So you got to look at it like, I've already got the best pick right now. So go finish your Cena.
I still say Cena. And
He's your sleeper.
my sleeper, I mean, to be honest with you, one way to improve TNA without even having to pick another wrestler is just go back to the standard 4-side ring. I think that the ring that they have now is horrible.
Okay.
I really think that the whole concept of it is just, I mean, honestly, like, that's octagon, you know what I mean? Keep that in UFC. That's not a wrestling ring. I mean, it just changes the pace of the way that they wrestle, and I think that, before you can try to outdo somebody else, you need to get the basics down first, you know what I mean? And the person that I would never hire would probably be, I'd probably say Hogan just for destroying something that was so good with WCW. He is the real reason WCW failed.
Interesting. I'm going to start with this. Granted, I think to start a company, you really need a good fan favorite. You need someone that people like to cheer. And I'm going to agree with Mike with Chris Jericho. I think he's been so underused. And this is his second stint at WWE, and he's still being underused.
Because it's not working. He didn't get the pop when he first came back.
It's not just that. I just think that, when you're known, in your first stint as the first undisputed champion in WWE's history and never get another title shot until you actually leave the company and still don't get it, there's a problem. And it doesn't make any sense for you to even still be there. So I feel like, Jericho trying to come in here again, be the savior as, he was being plugged by. I just think that, he needs to be champion. People love him. People enjoy his charisma. People enjoy his work. I think he's just a guy you got to build your company around. I think the sleeper is, surprisingly enough, as much as I hate his outfit, but I think it's MVP. I mean, I think he's a guy he's got some skills. He's someone you can really build around down the road. I don't know he's going to be that person to be the WWE champion. I just think that he'll stay in SmackDown because somehow Vince doesn't like, certain individuals very well, except maybe for one. So, but I just think that MVP, I think he's just being, I think he came in right. I liked how he came in with the, I got to have my this and that and all that, the contract signing.
Big deal.
Big deal. But the unfortunate thing the day the WWE had him was going up against the Brotherhoods of Destruction and basically almost killed his character. And it just didn't, and again, like you said earlier about the storyline, it just didn't make any sense. But I think now they're slowly trying to rebuild him again, and I think he'll be a very interesting person. The one group, let's say this, that I feel it should stay away, it's not just Scott Hall. I think it's the whole entire clique. And if you folks don't know who the clique is, it is Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels. Now, even though Shawn Michaels is kind of sort of like being Mr. Ho, Hell, Jesus, all that stuff, but I just feel like with those four in there, you're basically blocking a whole bunch of other young talent to trying to get up top.
But is Shawn Michaels really holding back any talent right now?
I think so.
Is Kevin Nash really holding back
I think so too.
Kevin Nash?
These
Kevin
guys,
Nash especially.
Yes.
Right now is holding back talent?
Right now.
When Kevin Nash's first act was coming into TNA was pushing the X Division, which no one else really wants to do over there.
But have you seen the way he's trying to do it?
Yeah.
It's not so much, it's the way Kevin Nash is doing it.
I don't see it.
Kevin Nash.
I don't see it. I'm with him over here, man.
Well,
that's why we're sitting on this side.
It's pushing Samoa Joe, which is, besides Angle's, the hardest working worker in TNA, period. I don't
Pretty much the only worker in TNA right now. He puts himself in all the segments.
Exactly.
He has to.
But I mean, honestly,
Angle's the new Hogan over there.
Since he's dominated, ever since he got over there, basically he's taken over.
But that's what they brought him in for.
True,
they needed somebody like that.
Let's say this: before Angle even showed up, Nash and Hall were there, and basically those two guys basically almost corrupted TNA. They pretty much tried to revitalize the NWO and all that jazz, and it didn't work. I just think that with those guys, you really just pretty much either be a manager or completely just retire. We don't need to see you anymore. You know, as much as the fans keep yelling, you know, it's like, oh, give us Hall, give us Nash, give us Triple H. Now let's put it this way: Triple H and Shawn. I just think that Triple H, as many is known, is he somehow keeps getting a title shot, which I still don't get.
Because he's married to Stephanie.
Well, besides that part.
But at the same time, look at him. He's removing himself from the title picture at numerous
I think
times.
no, it's not. I just think that maybe slowly.
Goodwill gestures.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
all they are.
Yeah. So, but somehow he'll like, okay, I'm taking a break. All right, can I get back in now? And it's like he's always in and out for some odd reason. It just doesn't make any sense to me for him to still be anywhere near the top 10.
Over. He's over.
He's done. He's been over. He's like, why do we keep having to see him?
He is over. His time is up.
Yeah.
He's over.
I think Triple H is more of one of the characters that doesn't need a title anymore. Much
Just
like
like
Taker,
Undertaker.
actually.
Just
They
like
don't.
Undertaker.
They don't need titles. They're always going to be
Shawn
over.
Michaels. I mean,
Shawn Michaels.
Look at
too.
Shawn Michaels. Anytime he's in a main event for the belt, you might as well not order the pay-per-view because he's not winning it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
Yeah.
he's there to build the other character up.
However, I wholeheartedly agree and back you up as far as Kevin Nash goes. Kevin Nash is locker room poison. Where's Teenage X Division? It's
nowhere.
Well, right now the X Division's being handled by the Dudley Boys over there, and they're the ones who are killing it. Kevin Nash is working with Samoa Joe, and he's finally being pushed up into the main event, which should have happened 2 years ago.
You know what that's called? It's called damage control.
Yes.
I'll talk about my boy Scott Hall. That's what Kevin Nash is doing. That's called damage control.
Okay. Well, gentlemen,
He's the bad guy.
He's the bad guy.
That's why you don't
Last
want him.
call for the alcohol. All right, gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for coming on. Boy, I got a lot of promotions to do. All right, first off, with the X-Man, you can catch him on Inside the Square Circle, Saturdays on DCTV at 1:30, Mondays at 7 p.m., and 3 p.m. on Wednesdays on Access Montgomery Channel 21. Also, you can go to mcwwrestling.com. MaximumWrestling.com to either get his bio, see some highlights, and all that good stuff. There's plenty. Michael, he has, again, his blog spot is modifiedshiningwizard.blogspot.com. That's a long one, so. And we will have a graphic for you, so we hope you're seeing it right now. And DJ Hannock, you can catch him anywhere in the DC area. Listen to his music. The man is absolutely phenomenal.
I need some theme music,
Yeah,
actually. We're going to get together after this.
All right, and we cannot forget, we have our Fantasy Sports World Girl of the Month. Her name is Jennifer Adams. She is a local model and actress. You can catch her sometimes doing, there's a show called the Daryl Winston Players. She's part of that troupe there. She's a very phenomenal girl, so congratulations, Jennifer. Hope to work with you again. And I hope to like to work with you guys again. So again, my time's out, ladies and gentlemen. Take care. Have a nice day.